The Millionaire and the Male Beggar, a story of unexpected friendship. Carlos Anderson sat at the gleaming table, his fingers tapping a quiet rhythm against the crystal glass. The restaurant buzzed around him, chandeliers casting glittering light over sharp suits and clinking silverware. He glanced at Emma, his new girlfriend, radiant in her sleek black dress, laughter bubbling from her lips. Everything felt perfect, like a movie scene. But then, without warning, the night crashed into something unthinkable. That's when Isabella appeared. She wasn't the polished woman from his memories. No silk gowns or perfectly styled hair. She wore a faded apron, stained and frayed, eyes heavy but burning with something fierce. And there, just beneath the loose shirt, was the unmistakable curve of a belly, a secret life growing inside her. The dozen waiters around her whispered, some casting nervous glances, others barely concealing their pity. Carlos froze, his chest tightened, the air vanished, replaced by the sharp sting of guilt cracking through him like shattered glass. Isabella, his ex-wife, the woman he left behind, pregnant, struggling to survive right under his nose. Emma's smile faltered. Her hand brushed against his arm, steadying, questioning. The room, so lively moments ago, dulled at the edges. Murmurs stirred in the crowd. Is that really her? Pregnant and working here? How did she end up like this? Eyes flicked between Carlos and Isabella, the millionaire and the waitress, the past and the present colliding wildly. Carlos's mind raced. Every memory surged forward. The fights, the silence, the cold goodbye. But now, seeing Isabella like this, the desperate woman he thought he'd left behind but couldn't forget, the years of distance collapsed all at once. He wanted to reach out, to help, to fix what he'd broken. But could he? Was it too late? Isabella's glance met his across the room, haunted, wary, wrapped in layers of pain and distrust. Her lips pressed tight, a silent don't. Yet just below fear there was a flicker, a spark, hope, or maybe warning. It wasn't clear. Emma's eyes burned with suspicion, a quiet storm brewing. The delicate balance of Carlos's new life teetered on the edge. Then, as Carlos stood, heart pounding, ready to close the gap between past and present, a shadow flickered behind Isabella. A man, not just anyone, someone from a darker chapter of her life, with eyes as cold as steel, and a stare that carved into Carlos's soul. The air thickened. Danger was close, too close. A whisper of chaos waiting, ready to tear open the fragile thread they were just beginning to grasp. Carlos clenched his fists. Could he protect her? Could he face the ghosts without succumbing to the pain all over again? Or was this just the start of a fall he couldn't stop? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Carlos stood rooted to the spot, heart racing, fear clawing at his throat like a wild animal. Isabella's gaze darted back to the man behind her, a darkness swirling around him that felt like a storm closing in. The chatter of the restaurant faded into muffled whispers, drowning under the weight of the moment. Carlos took a step forward, driven by an instinct he couldn't ignore. Behind Isabella, the man shifted. A grin stretched across his face, sharp and dangerous, the kind that sent icy fingers down Carlos's spine. "Look who's here to play hero," he sneered. his voice dripping with contempt. The shock in the room cracked like thunder. Embarrassment washed over Isabella. She turned from Carlos, eyes narrowing, as though trying to shield herself from the memories returning like a raging tide. Carlos knew that face. It was the face of someone who had seen too much. Could he really protect her? A familiar anguish gripped his chest as he fought against the urge to rush to her side. "Isabella, what's going on?" His voice broke through the noise. "Stay away," she shouted, the panic rising in her tone like smoke. But it was too late. The man moved. He stepped into the fray, closing the distance with an air of control, a predator weaving through its prey. The restaurant's clientele shifted, whispers rising like a wave, as everyone turned to gawk at the unfolding drama. "You think you can just waltz back into her life?" he taunted, their history crackling in the air. "Do you even know what you left her to deal with?" Carlos's breath caught. The world spun. What did this man mean? What had he done? It took only one glance at Isabella's face, the way her eyes dulled, to know the truth made flesh. Carlos was not the only one parrying scars. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread. The man's smirk faded, replaced by a haunting intensity. In those eyes, Carlos recognized a twisted bond between them, an unearthly familiarity that made him shiver. "I'm here to collect what's mine," he said quietly. "And you know what you owe me, Isabella." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd like an electrifying jolt. Carlos felt his heart drop. His mind raced. The truth crashed over him like an avalanche. "What do you mean?" he croaked, dread intertwining with confusion. Isabella's eyes darkened. Desperation flickered across her features. "He's not who you think he is, Carlos. He's tied to something I left behind." Before Carlos could respond, the man lunged, grabbing Isabella's arm with a vice grip that made her wince. Fear shot through the air like a bullet. "You're coming with me," he growled, dragging her toward the exit. Carlos's world shrank to a pinprick of focus. Every second stretched, adrenaline surging through him, blinding him to the crowd's shock. He couldn't let her go. In a heartbeat, he surged forward, closing the distance, muscles straining against the weight of uncertainty. Just as he reached for Isabella, the man spun, his other hand flashing, wielding something sharp, a knife catching the chandelier light like a silent scream. The room fell into a hushed, breathless silence. Carlos's heart raced as he realized they were all spectators to a twisted reunion, the stakes driving deep into the flesh of his life, carving new lines into a map he thought he understood. "Isabella!" Carlos shouted, reaching out as fear coiled tighter around him. In that split second, reality skewed, futures collapsed, and the fragile ties binding them all came unraveled. The world spun again, but this time it felt like a trap closing in. Or would he lose everything else in the chase to save her? Waiting on a precipice of dread, Carlos felt that the answer hid just beneath the chaos, a truth potent enough to rewrite their lives forever. Carlos's outstretched hand trembled, as if it were a tether to hope amid the chaos. He didn't think, he just acted. In that heartbeat of reckless courage, the world shifted. "Isabella!" he yelled again, desperation slicing through him as the man gripped her tighter, the knife glinting menacingly. The crowd gasped collectively, eyes widening, silent witnesses transfixed in horror. But just as Carlos moved forward, a piercing scream shattered the tension. It wasn't from Isabella, or even the man. It came from Emma, her voice rising above the clamor, like a siren in the dark. "Carlos, look out!" In an instant, time slowed. The air thickened. Another figure emerged from the shadows, an unfamiliar woman with wild eyes, charging toward the scene like a bullet from a gun. She crashed into the man from behind, sending him staggering. Not expecting it, he released Isabella, who fell backward onto the floor. But the chaos didn't stop there. As the knife clattered from his hand, the crowd erupted into chaos. Chairs toppled, plates shattered, the veneer of civilization fracturing. Carlos lunged, catching Isabella before she hit the ground. He pulled her close, the warmth of her body mingling with the cold sweat of fear. "Are you okay?" he breathed, scanning her face. But her eyes were clouded, shocked and wide, as if seeing something unimaginable. Then a deafening crash echoed through the restaurant. The woman had thrown a glass, the jagged edges glimmering precariously as they landed. In the split second before anyone could process it, that woman turned, and Carlos's heart stopped. "Emma?" he murmured, confusion sprawling across his face. But no, it wasn't Emma. It was Isabella's twin sister, whom Carlos had only seen once in passing. Years ago. His mind raced, remembering whispers of a troubled past, of unresolved secrets and dark paths. "Get away from her, Carlos," the sister screamed, eyes blazing, the knife-wielding man rising in the background, shaking off the shock. "Wait, what?" Carlos stammered, a flood of questions bursting in his chest. But before he could voice another word, Isabella's sister launched herself at him. "You don't understand. She's in danger. You have to trust me." The words hit him like a punch. The truth shattered the fragile veil of understanding he thought he had. "Isabella, what's happening?" he gasped, his heart pounding wildly. Isabella's face crumpled, as if the weight of her entire existence had descended upon her shoulders. "Carlos, there is so much you don't know. I didn't just leave. I ran. I was trying to protect you. You can't believe what he said. He owns me. He thinks... The knife-wielding man surged forward again, dark intent brimming in his gaze, and Carlos instinctively moved to shield Isabella. But then, a blinding light lit up the restaurant, an emergency exit sign blaring to life, illuminating the chaos. Screams and shouts swirled around him. Suddenly, deep within the tumult, a voice cut through the noise. "Enough!" It was the manager, bold and fierce, stepping forward with authority. "Everyone, calm down. We'll handle this." Carlos's mind raced. What did he mean they'd handle this? Could there be more hidden beneath the surface? Secrets twisted like dark vines around their lives, choking the truth. Could protecting Isabella mean tearing apart everything he thought he knew? As he met Isabella's gaze, he felt a flicker of understanding, a silent plea. "What do you mean, you're owed?" It wasn't just about a knife in the room. It was about lives intertwined in ways he couldn't begin to grasp. And right there, in the eye of the storm, everything transformed. The bonds of love and betrayal morphed into a web of deceit. Before Carlos could voice another question, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into a semi-darkness, revealing more shadows than he had ever imagined. With a sudden twist of fate, Isabella took his hand, squeezing tight. Her voice barely above a whisper. "You have to believe me. We're not safe here." In that split second, the truth dangled between them like a fragile thread. But suddenly, the knife of revelation was closer than it had ever been. Would he dare to cut through that darkness? Would he chase after the shadows, or retreat into the safety of ignorance? The climax teetered on that razor-thin edge, and Carlos realized nothing would ever be the same again. Carlos held on to Isabella tightly, her hand fitting into his as they stow. He searched her eyes, desperate for clarity, searching for the thread of truth tangled within the storm of lies. "What do you mean we're not safe here?" he breathed, the urgency in his voice crackling like electricity. But just as she opened her mouth to respond, a powerful boom echoed through the restaurant, shaking the very foundation beneath their feet. The front doors of the establishment burst open, slamming against the walls. A torrent of white smoke surged in, billowing like a dark promise, engulfing everything in its path. Customers screamed, scattering, scrambling to find safety. Carlos felt instinct kick in as he pulled Isabella close, shielding her from the panicked rush. But it was hard to breathe. The smoke stung his throat, clouding his vision. "Keep your heads down," the restaurant manager shouted, his voice barely slicing through the chaos. But the panic was deafening. Then, in a flash, an unexpected force burst through the smoke. A group of men in black tacked. Their expressions were grim, eyes darting hungrily through the haze. And in a chilling, coordinated move, they spread out, taking control of the room with an efficiency that sent chills down Carlos's spine. The knife-wielding man, who had just been seconds away from dragging Isabella away, stayed frozen, slack-jawed in confusion as the newcomers scanned the space. The atmosphere shifted instantly from chaos to confrontation. "Where is she?" one of the intruders barked, his voice booming. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward the men. "Who?" Carlos stammered, slipping into a protective stance in front of Isabella. But the man didn't reply. Instead, he turned to his companion, who was scanning the crowd with laser focus. "The target must be here. We can't lose her again." The urgency in their words sent a shockwave through the room. Carlos felt his heart race. The air thickened with tension, twisting around them. "Carlos, Isabella started, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with fear. But he couldn't allow his mind to wander. Confusion gripped him hard. Before he could react, one of the tactical men moved straight toward them, eyes narrowed and fierce. "Get her!" he shouted, lunging toward Isabella. Carlos reacted instinctively, pushing her behind him, but the heavy hands of the attackers gripped him, tearing him apart from the woman he was trying to protect. "No!" he shouted, panic blurring his vision as everything unraveled. In the thrumming chaos, Isabella's sister shouted, "It's a setup! They're here for her!" But Carlos couldn't comprehend. Who are they here for?" he yelled, his heart hammering inside his chest. Then it happened, a deafening explosion of sound, followed by brilliant, blinding light. The walls shook, and the ground seemed to shift underfoot. The smoke began to clear. As the light dimmed, Carlos blinked against the brightness. What met his eyes was a scene beyond comprehension. In the center of the chaos stood Isabella, glowing with an unearthly aura, her eyes shimmering with a power he had never seen. Her sister stood beside her, mirroring the same ethereal glow, as if they were linked by something deeper than blood. "Isabella?" Carlos whispered, shock gripping him hard. "Carlos, there's so much you don't know." Her voice was steady, but the tremor in her chin betrayed her fear. The men surrounding them stilled, captivated, eyes fixated on the sisters. "The time has come," one murmured, his resolve faltering. Carlos's mind raced, emotions crumbling, pieces of the puzzle flipping and scattering. Before he could grasp the magnitude of it all, Isabella's gaze locked onto his. "I was chosen for a reason. They were coming for me, and now, you're in danger too." The realization hit him like a fist to the gut. Everything he thought he knew, every memory, every reason behind their separation, unraveled before him in a whirlwind of dark secrets and unforeseen destinies. And just as he opened his mouth to speak, intense flashes exploded through the restaurant walls, sending shards of reality shattering into chaos. The last thing Carlos saw before the world dimmed was Isabella's fierce determination, mixed with an indescribable fear, a look that would haunt him forever. As the explosion rocked Isabella's fierce determination glowed like a beacon, pulling him closer, yet the chaos around them threatened to tear them apart. Then, without warning, Isabella's sister lifted her hands, her expression morphing into something he couldn't quite read. A sudden crackle filled the air, and then everything shifted. Carlos blinked. Light surged from the sisters, pure and unyielding, wrapping around them like an invisible shield. The tactical men froze, eyes wide, confusion exploding into disbelief as they stepped back, their weapons lowered. "Get away from them," one of them gasped, but the words were lost in the commotion. Instead of moving backward, Isabella took a step forward. Her voice rang out today like a storm breaking. "I won't let you take her," she screamed, and an electric pulse shot through the room. Everyone watched. The crowd held its breath as Isabella's twin sister fell to the ground, her body racked with trembling. Time stood still. "Wait!" Carlos shouted, confusion clumping in his throat. "What's happening? Who are you?" But Isabella's focus sharpened, and she turned toward him, her eyes blazing. "I didn't just leave you behind, Carlos. I was chosen. They were coming for me and for her. It's bigger than we thought." Before he could process her words, an energy burst from her sister. A wave so fierce it sent chairs flying. Carlos gasped as he shielded Isabella from the debris. The tactical men lurched back, visibly shaken, surrendering to an unknown force. The restaurant walls creaked, shadows twisting unnaturally. But in that strange moment, inspiration ignited something in Carlos. In the middle of the storm, grips held tight in the chaos. He realized the aching truth. Isabella wasn't merely a woman caught in trouble. She was the center of something otherworldly. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something darting in the smoke. A figure, small but poised, twisted through the haze, like a knife cutting through fog. Time shattered again as realization gripped Carlos's chest. Another person emerged. His heart dropped. Emma! She fought through the chaos, and he could see horror etched across her face and rage burning in her eyes. "What is happening? Are you involved in this?" she yelled, pointing an accusatory finger at Isabella. "Emma, no!" Carlos shouted, desperate to reach her, but something twisted in the air, pulling him back. Emma's expression shifted from anger to shock, recognition dawning like a blade slicing through darkness. "Isabella?" she whispered, disbelief warping her features. You're her sister?" Isabella nodded, tears glistening. "I didn't want to bring you into this." But before any other words left their lips, the man who had threatened Isabella surged to his feet. He charged, a tempest of rage and desperation. Everything else fell away as the room erupted into pandemonium. Carlos lunged, propelled by instinct to shield them. But as he did, a booming voice cut through the confusion. "Stop!" It echoed. The figure behind the chaos, the apparent leader of the tactical team, stepped forward with a calm that belied the storm brewing. "Enough of this. We need to take her now." But as he reached for Isabella, it hit Carlos like a brick. "No, she's not your weapon," he shouted, awakening something deep within him. "She's not just a target. She's—" And then it happened. In an unexpected flicker, the energy surged from Isabella and her sister, hitting Carlos, binding them in an electrifying dance. In that instant, a jolt of clarity shattered the haze. Memories flooded Carlos's mind, fragments of moments, emotions, whispers from the past. He saw flashes of his life intertwined with the sisters, pieces he had never understood before. A hidden connection, threading through time, binding them in ways they had never consciously recognized. But the reality collided hard. "Carlos, you have to choose." Isabella's voice rang clear in the chaos. "They are here for you too. You're in danger because of me. They'll stop at nothing." And just as those words cut through the air, darkness enveloped them once more. The tactical men moved, and an explosion shattered reality again. In the haze of chaos, Carlos realized he wasn't just protecting Isabella. He was protecting himself too. The lines between love and danger blurred in a way he hadn't fathomed before. He faced the sisters, heart racing. The truth left him stunned. "You too, you're more than I knew. What do I mean to all of this?" And just as the question hung heavy between them, the restaurant walls trembled, shattering once again, leaving a mystery that would ripple through their lives forever. Carlos's throat tightened as he scanned the chaos, the surreal scene unfolding around him. The restaurant felt alive, a swirling storm of chaos and dread. Isabella stood there, her power pulsing, and for a moment, he felt invincible, like they could conquer whatever darkness loomed. But then, just as quickly, fear swallowed him whole. "Carlos, you have to choose!" Isabella's voice rang loud and clear, but her eyes were wide with terror, a deeper kind of fight brewing within her. The tactical men's presence grew more menacing, their weapons glinting. "Nothing is going to happen to you, I promise," he shouted back. But the words felt weak, faltering against the weight of uncertainty. And then everything changed. A loud crash echoed from the back of the restaurant. The sound rippled through the air like a shockwave. Heads turned, conversations halted, hearts raced. A giant figure burst into the room, almost unrecognizable through the dust and smoke. The faces of both Isabella and her sister twisted in horror. "No, no!" they cried in unison. "What the—" Carlos barely saw the figure's face before recognition hit him like a guillotine. Emma, but not Emma as he knew her. Her eyes glowed bright, almost luminescent, shimmering with power that eclipsed the chaos. The knife-wielding man recoiled, fear marring his features. "She wasn't supposed to," he stammered, eyes darting in disbelief. Carlos froze, a chilling realization washing over him. Emma was not just caught up in this storm, she was the storm, and the room felt like it might break around them. "Emma!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his chest. The intensity of the moment stole his breath. "I'm here to end this," she cried, her voice reverberating through the chaos. "You think you're the only ones hiding truths? The world isn't what you think it is. I'm not who you think I am." Carlos's heart raced in confusion and dread. "What are you talking about?" There was a glaring moment of silence, a moment that felt infinite. Then it detonated. "I'm destined for this!" Emma shouted, her form glowing more brightly, shadows leaking away. "I've done my part to keep you safe. You're all pawns in a game far bigger than you realize." Pain splintered through time. Isabella's sister stepped back, shock on her face as everything twisted. "A pawn?" she gasped. "You've been betraying us!" "No," Emma shouted, voice slicing through tension. "I've been trying to protect him. All of you." "From what?" Carlos barely managed, his voice heavy with betrayal. You were with me. We built a life together." But as those words left his lips, Emma's glowing aura flickered, revealing a grim, determined look. "I wasn't just with you. I was gathering intel to save humanity from a prophecy that leads to your destruction." The room erupted into chaos again as disbelief ricocheted through the audience. Carlos felt the ground shift. Was this real? The women he loved, standing there at odds, wrapped in secrets and shadows, each identity unraveling, pulled tighter against the storm brewing around them, with flickering lights casting dark shadows. Carlos's heart dropped into the void between them. "But you never said," he whispered. "You never told me the truth, Emma." She lowered her gaze slightly, shame washing over her features. "I thought I could shield you. The truth was a shield I thought I could bear alone, until it became too heavy." Suddenly, the tactical men stirred, confusion giving way to anger. "You'll never escape your fate," one snarled, moving toward Emma with fury glinting in his eye. Everything inside Carlos ignited. "No! You can't hurt her!" He surged forward, lost in newfound determination. But before he could get far, the ground trembled again, a pulse that thrummed through the very marrow of his bones. The restaurant felt alive, twisting and swirling, as if responding to the truth turning within their hearts. Then came the shattering revelation. A roar like thunder shattered the air, and the world collapsed around them. There, beneath the chaos, Carlos felt something rip through the fabric of reality itself, like a knife cutting time in two, leaving behind a haunting silence within the storm. And in that confused silence, a flicker of understanding began to pulse. Who were they, really? What darkness bound them together? Even as light flooded the room, hope wove through despair, Carlos realized this moment teetered on the brink of destiny. The truth swung wildly, a path leading somewhere unknown, but now it was all unraveling. In his heart, he felt a terrifying anticipation, a choice born of pain and love. Would they fight the facade surrounding them, or surrender to the truth that waited just beyond the shadows? The air crackled with uncertainty, curling around their fate with a tight grip, waiting, just waiting for the next strike. Carlos stood, eyes wide, heart hammering against the tightened confines of his chest. The room felt electric, alive with their tangled truths. The sisters shone like radiant stars, and Emma, glowing and fierce, demanded attention. The tension between them felt thick, almost suffocating. Then the climate shifted, shadows swirling as if they were responding to a deep, hidden current within. "No!" Carlos screamed, voice faltering under despair as the flicker of light around Emma faded. She looked at him, fear melding with a determination that shook him to his core. "I had to protect you. You have no idea what they want," Emma replied, her glow dimming but still vivid against the chaos. And just as her words hung heavy in the air, a resounding crash echoed through the space, commanding silence. The front glass doors shattered, splintering into a million pieces, and a blinding white light flooded into the restaurant. Carlos squinted, heart racing, instinctively shielding Isabella and her sister from the onslaught of broken glass. The tactical men scrambled, their dominance crumbling. Whispers of confusion passed through the crowd like a brewing storm. Everyone was frozen, mouths agape, eyes wide, all fixated on the blinding light that swept into the room. Then it happened. From that light emerged a figure, tall and imposing, dressed in a long flowing robe that seemed to shimmer with the essence of stars. They glided forward, a presence so commanding it stole the very breath from Carlos's lungs. "No!" one of the tactical men shouted, his voice laced with terror. But before anyone could process, the figure raised a hand, a luminous wave washing over the room. And as it did, the air thickened, charged. Suddenly, it struck hard. Carlos staggered back, his vision blurring, tightening like a vice. "What is this?" he gasped. As the light shimmered closer, Carlos caught a glimpse of the figure's face. Recognition pierced him like a dagger. It was someone he never expected to see again. His mother. Long fought lost in a haze of grief and abandonment. The woman who abandoned him as a child stood right there, peaceful yet powerful. "Mom," he whispered, disbelief crashing through him like waves against a shore. "Yes, Carlos." "I'm your destiny," she replied, voice echoing with a strange resonance. The weight of sadness and love settled in every syllable. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Emma's eyes widened, shock entangling with unresolved pain. Isabella's grip on Carlos tightened, confusion dancing across her features. The sisters exchanged glances, the room swirling with chaos and revelation. "What do you mean?" Carlos stammered, emotions spilling from his heart like a raging river. "You left me. You chose." "The darkness over you?" his mother interjected, her voice cutting through the tension. "I was cloaked in fear, but it's all connected, Carlos. I protected you by leaving." The truth hit him like a freight train, unraveling everything he thought he knew. "Protecting me?" he said, incredulous. "You protected me by abandoning me. You think I'm not in danger now?" The room pulsed with energy, fear, uncertainty. Eyes darted from Carlos to Emma to Isabella, creating a web of desperation, straining against the truth. Then, Carlos felt it, a cold chill wrapping around his spine, a darkness creeping beneath the surface of the revelation. "What is going on?" he demanded, urgency spilling from his lips. "What do they want with us?" His mother's expression darkened, shadows shifting behind her like silhouettes in the night. "They want to own you, to harness your power, and they will stop at nothing." Her voice broke, filled with an echo of sorrow. In that moment, everything stood still. The restaurant, the noise, the chaos faded into a dull roar as the enormity of the situation enveloped him. Right then, Carlos recognized the jagged edges of betrayal spiraling around him, wrapping tightly. Before he could question further, the tactical men surged, desperately scrambling. "We have to get her," one shouted, eyes lit with fury, the knife-wielding man taking the lead once more. And in a split second, chaos erupted again, a flurry of motion. Emma's power ignited, energy crashing against the darkness threatening to consume him. The flickering light turned overpowering as their bond, this tangled web, unraveled in that moment. "Mom, get back!" Carlos yelled, the raw terror creeping up his throat. His heart thudded loud, drowning out everything else as he realized his whole world just flipped upside down. In the heart of this storm, he stood not just at the eye of danger, but the core of a deeper truth. A mother he thought he lost, resurrected in front of him, carrying secrets dangerous enough to rewrite their lives forever. Would they embrace that darkness together, or would it tear them apart? Everything felt like it was hanging by a thread, waiting, just waiting for the next breath, the next decision, the next shocking twist that was yet to come. The air pulsed with energy as Carlos stared wide-eyed at his mother. The chaos around him faded, the shadows bending to the presence that bathed everything in white light. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy storm cloud, every heartbeat echoing against the din of disbelief. "Mom, how? I thought you were gone forever." His mother's expression wavered between sorrow and strength. "I never wanted to leave you, Carlos, but there are forces at play." Before she could finish, the tactical men moved, charged with renewed aggression. They saw it, the vulnerability in the moment, a mere whisper of hesitation. "We need to get her!" one of them shouted again, eyes blazing with desperation. "Stay away from her!" Carlos roared, stepping forward, heart racing as he put himself between them and the ones he loved. The air felt thick, electric. Every breath tasted of fear and uncertainty. But then, without warning, a loud crack echoed through the restaurant. The front window shattered again, sending shards flying, and another figure slipped through the chaos, and Carlos felt his heart drop as he recognized the silhouette. It was Emma, but not the Emma he knew. Her eyes glowed like twin stars, fierce and commanding. "Emma, what are you doing?" Carlos shouted, panic wrapping around him like chains. She stepped into the light, her form shimmering, looking more like a powerful being than the woman he loved. "I've finally come to embrace who I really am," she declared, voice booming, every word slicing through the haze. Everyone gaped. Carlos felt the ground shift beneath him, heart pounding as confusion surged. What was happening? This wasn't just chaos anymore. It was escalating into something primal. As Emma raised her hands, tendrils of energy crackled between her fingertips. "I am the key to everything you've been trying to understand, Carlos." The room fell silent, each breath caught in disbelief. Isabella's sister stepped forward, eyes narrowing with calculation, instinctively recognizing danger. "You can't! This isn't what we'd think!" she yelled. But Emma's darkness swept through the air and silenced her words. The tactical men recoiled, their confidence faltering for the first time. "Get her!" one shouted again, frustration boiling in his voice. But Emma's smile morphed into something venomous. "You don't understand. The prophecy binds me, and I have the strength to rewrite it." And that was when it hit. The connection shifted violently, like a raging river redirecting its course. Carlos felt a burning sensation sprout at the base of his skull, and suddenly everything came crashing together like a thunderstorm. No, you're not serious," he breathed, horror flooding his veins. "You can't mean what this implies." But Emma's expression twisted. "I am destined to lead, Carlos. I've kept you safe by hiding from the truth, by loving you." A sharp gasp rippled through the room, feeding the tension as realization dawned on those present. "This was never about us?" Carlos's voice trembled, uncertainty twisting at the edges. "Exactly," she exclaimed, every word soaked in regret and determination. "It's about something greater than our love. You were never meant to be just another man in my life. You were meant to be a vessel." The room exploded with whispers and gasps. The tactical men stood frozen, the crowd recoiling in shock. Carlos felt his entire world splinter apart. "No," he shouted, grasping at the fraying edges of reality. "You can't choose this path. You love me, don't you?" But Emma's eyes glimmered with something other than love, something colder. "I love you, but destiny calls for choices we never thought we would have to make." Before he could respond, a blinding light exploded from Emma, swallowing the room in a brilliant flash. And as the brilliance dimmed, a staggering truth slipped into focus. Carlos felt it deep in his bones. Everything that he had believed, every moment they had shared together, was a fragile facade. As the last remnants of light faded, the murmurs in the room turned to a shocked silence, leaving Carlos clutching the edges of shattered dreams. "Isabella," he managed to breathe, feeling the loss clawing at his insides. "What have you done?" But just then, an ominous rumble thundered from beneath the floor, shaking the very fabric of their world. Would this shocking revelation seal their fate, or was it merely the beginning of a new, darker chapter? The air pulsed with energy as Carlos stared wide-eyed at his mother. The chaos around him faded, the shadows bending to the presence that bathed everything in white light. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy storm cloud, every heartbeat echoing against the din of disbelief. "Mom, how? I thought you were gone forever." His mother's expression wavered between sorrow and strength. "I never wanted to leave you, Carlos, but there are forces at play." Before she could finish, the tactical men moved, charged with renewed aggression. They saw it, the vulnerability in the moment, a mere whisper of hesitation. "We need to get her," one of them shouted again, eyes blazing with desperation. "Stay away from her," Carlos roared, stepping forward, heart racing as he put himself between them and the ones he loved. The air felt thick, electric. Every breath tasted of fear and uncertainty. But then, without warning, a loud crack echoed through the restaurant. The front window shattered again, sending shards flying, and another figure slipped through the chaos. Carlos felt his heart drop as he recognized the silhouette. It was Emma, but not the Emma he knew. Her eyes glowed like twin stars, fierce and commanding. "Emma, what are you doing?" Carlos shouted, panic wrapping around him like chains. She stepped into the light, her form shimmering, looking more like a powerful being than the woman he loved. "I've finally come to embrace who I really am," she declared, voice booming, every word slicing through the haze. Everyone gaped. Carlos felt the ground shift beneath him, heart pounding as confusion surged. What was happening? This wasn't just chaos anymore. It was escalating into something primal as Emma raised her hands. Tendrils of energy crackled between her fingertips. I am the key to everything you've been trying to understand, Carlos. The room fell silent, each breath caught in disbelief. Isabella's sister stepped forward, eyes narrowing with calculation, instinctively recognizing danger. "You can't! This isn't what you think," she yelled, but Emma's darkness swept through the air and silenced her words. The tactical men recoiled, their confidence faltering for the first time. "Get her!" one shouted again, frustration boiling in his voice. But Emma's smile morphed into something venomous. "You don't understand. The prophecy binds me, and I have the strength to rewrite it." And that was when it hit. The connection shifted violently. Like a raging river redirecting its course, Carlos felt a burning sensation sprout at the base of his skull, and suddenly, everything came crashing together like a thunderstorm. "No, no, you're not serious," he breathed, horror flooding his veins. "You can't mean what this implies." But Emma's expression twisted. "I am destined to lead, Carlos. I've kept you safe by hiding from the truth, by loving you." A sharp gasp rippled through the room, feeding the tension as realization dawned on those present. "This was never about us?" Carlos's voice trembled, uncertainty twisting at the edges. "Exactly," she exclaimed, every word soaked in regret and determination. "It's about something greater than our love. You were never meant to be just another man in my life. You were meant to be a vessel." The room exploded with whispers and gasps. The tactical men stood frozen, the crowd recoiling in shock. Carlos felt his entire world splinter apart. "No!" he shouted, grasping at the fraying edges of reality. "You can't choose this path. You love me, don't you?" But Emma's eyes glimmered with something other than love, something colder. "I love you, but destiny calls for choices we never thought we would have to make." Before he could respond, a blinding light exploded from Emma, swallowing the room in a brilliant flash. And as the brilliance dimmed, a staggering truth slipped into focus. Carlos felt it deep in his bones. Everything that he had believed, every moment they had shared together, was a fragile facade. As the last remnants of light faded, the murmurs in the room turned to a shocked silence, leaving Carlos clutching the edges of shattered dreams. "Isabella," he managed to breathe, feeling the loss clawing at his insides. "What have you done?" But just then, an ominous rumble thundered from beneath the floor, shaking the very fabric of their world. A crack split the ground, and everything shifted as the floor began to open up, revealing a hidden chasm glowing with a sinister light. From that dark void, a figure emerged, crawling slowly. It was a reflection, a grotesque version of Carlos himself. "Did you really think this was just a game?" The dark Carlos spat, a smirk curling on his lips. "I've been here all along, waiting." The eruption of gasps echoed as Carlos's heart raced. The shadows darkened, wrapping around him like chains. A mirror of reality. "No, no, this can't be." The darkness engulfed him, and as it did, he felt memories flood back. Painful, buried truths. Secret choices he made in a past he had tried to escape. The crowd exchanged horrified glances, emotions boiling over. Relationships spiraled on the knife's edge as reality twisted like a serpent. And Carlos realized the enemy was always closer than he'd thought. "Who are you?" he shouted, feeling the weight of the moment crush him. As the shadows stepped forward, the gallery fell silent. "I am everything you wish to forget, and now you're trapped," it whispered as the ground beneath them began to crack and splinter even more. The world stilled, and in that moment, Carlos faced not just one enemy, but the very essence of what he might have become. a wave of doubt crashing over him, leaving the truth hanging in the air like a blade. Would he reclaim his identity or be lost forever in the darkness? The air crackled with tension. The swirling chaos around Ka. His dark self stood there, grinning with malice, while his mother radiated a powerful light. Isabella and her sister moved closer, eyes wide with fear and determination. Carlos swallowed hard, the knot in his throat tightening. "No!" he shouted, clenching his fists. "I won't let you take me down this path." His voice trembled, but the weight of his mother's presence filled him with strength. The dark version of Carlos tilted his head, mocking. "You still don't understand, do you? There's power in accepting who you are. Embrace it." "No," Carlos echoed, shaking his head. "I choose to fight against you." His mother stepped forward, her voice steady and calm. "Carlos, you hold the key to breaking this cycle. You have the power to change everything." Suddenly, the ground shook, the fissures spreading wider, chaos exploding around them. The gathering of whispers grew louder, and the tactical men, who had been frozen in fear, began to pull themselves together. They readied their weapons, eyes glinting with renewed fire. "Get them!" one of them yelled, charging toward Emma. With a surge of adrenaline, Carlos felt a rush of heat course through him. "No!" he shouted, and in that moment, energy exploded from him, golden and fierce. Light and darkness clashed violently. The crowd gasped, the shockwave sending bodies sprawling. Carlos felt Isabella's hand in his, a connection grounding him. He turned to her, eyes asking for courage. "We need to unite," she said, urgency trembling within her voice. "Together," he affirmed. They formed a circle, joined hands with Emma and Isabella's sister, and with that, a shockwave pulsed through the air, refracting the darkness around them. The ground shook fiercely as cracks began to seal, the dark fabric of reality limiting, folding in on itself. The dark Carlos snarled, anger radiating off him. "You can't escape your fate," he screamed, rage boiling beneath his skin. But the sisters' glowing light expanded, each pulse igniting sparks of hope. "Embrace your truth," Isabella shouted, and in tandem they released everything they held back. Carlos felt the tension in his chest loosen, releasing fear and doubt. "I will not be your pawn," he roared, a wave of power surging around them. The tactical men reeled back, expressions shifting from aggression to dread. The dark Carlos shrieked, "No, this isn't how it ends!" And in a flourish of blinding light, the dark version of Carlos dissolved, his screams echoing until silence fell over the restaurant. The tension broke, the weight of the moment fading into the fading echoes of victory. Carlos stumbled back, breathless. Emma rushed toward him, her glow dimming but still radiant. "You did it, Carlos!" she exclaimed, eyes shimmering with tears of relief. "I wasn't alone," he replied, glancing at Isabella, her presence reassuring. The sisters embraced, and with them a bond strengthened amid the shadows of their past. The crowd began to stir, slowly coming back to reality. Faces shifted from shock to understanding, murmurs filling the air like a gentle breeze. The tension had lifted, replaced with a cautious sense of hope. As the weight of what had just unfolded sank in, Carlos looked at his mother, who held back tears of joy. "You found your strength," she whispered. But Carlos felt a knot of uncertainty still lingered. "What happens now?" He breathed, realization dawning that even this battle was just one chapter. "I don't know," he admitted, but despite the doubt, a smiling warmth spread through him. And as the air around them shimmered with new beginnings, they all knew that a new journey had just started. Was it a path leading to brighter days, or were there shadows still lurking around the corner? Would they be able to face whatever lay ahead together? And one thing was certain. the light they had found was just the beginning. This is your moment. You must subscribe now to the channel to never miss another exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and wild theories about this wild ending. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know what went down. True fans know how important it is to support the channel with your action.